Welcome to the Living to 100 Club podcast. Here's our host, Dr. Joseph Casciani.
Welcome to the Living to 100 Club, where we explore what it really means to live longer and better. I'm Dr. Joe Casciani, a geropsychologist focused on the mindset, habits, and science of aging well. Each episode brings you practical ideas and conversations to help you stay engaged, resilient, and purposeful at any age. And now, today's program. In today's episode, I speak with Amanda Montague of Carleton University about her innovative community-based research on social isolation and loneliness among older adults. Also on our program today is Anna Cuylits, chair of the Senior Watch in Ottawa, Canada. Working closely with Anna's group in Ottawa, Amanda used participatory methods, including workshops and digital storytelling, to better understand how older adults experience connection in everyday life. Rather than focusing only on isolation, the project explored what helps people feel connected, revealing an important insight. Loneliness may be more prevalent and more complex than social isolation alone. Their conversation highlights how social connection is shaped not just by relationships, but also by the design of the communities. We'll learn more a little bit after I describe their backgrounds. Amanda Montague, Dr. Montague, received her PhD from the University of Ottawa in 2019. Her dissertation, Mobile Memories, Canadian Cultural Memory in the Digital Age, explored how mobile technologies and locative media shape everyday experiences of memory and place. Amanda has extensive experience developing community-engaged and experiential learning courses as an instructor, collaborator, and consultant. Since 2016, she has designed projects in digital humanities that promote creativity, collaboration, and community building. Amanda continues to advance interdisciplinary, community-driven digital scholarship while fostering equitable co-teaching and co-learning environments for students, instructors, and community members. Anna Cuylits is chair of OSCA Senior Watch Old Ottawa South, also known as SWOOS. She retired in 2012 after a 40-year career in community and hospital work. Wanting to age in place in her inner urban community of Old Ottawa South, Anna and other residents recognized barriers to healthy aging and independent living. In 2018, they founded SWOOS to raise awareness and advocate under improvements in healthcare, housing, social connection, and winter walkability. Anna graduated from the Academy of Social Sciences and Social Work in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and has held professional social work registrations in British Columbia, Ontario, and nationally in Canada. In 2025, Anna received the Ontario Senior Achievement Award. Welcome to both of you to our program today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Great, you're welcome.
very much.
Well, I'm excited to have you both because you're very knowledgeable about this important topic of loneliness and isolation in seniors and older adults, and I think we can take a deep dive into this topic. Let's start with the basic question. What's the difference between social isolation and loneliness, and why is this distinction important?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was one that we really started from when
Sure.
we created this research partnership. Our first step in formulating our research questions was to do a literature review. So it is quite clear in the literature that loneliness and social isolation are two distinct concepts. And here in Canada, we have the National Institute on Aging. So for aging and older adults, loneliness is considered a subjective, distressed feeling that arises from a perceived gap between desired social relationships and actual social relationships. Whereas social isolation measures more of an objective deficiency in the number or the quality of social connections or interactions. And so they are related, but they're also recognized as distinct constructs that, a person may be socially isolated without feeling lonely, or a person may have social connections, they may have a spouse, they may have family close by, but feel very lonely within that context.
Mm-hmm.
So in our study, we were really trying to understand what are the contributing factors, because they are shared across both. Rather than measuring instances of isolation or loneliness in the neighborhood, we just wanted to understand how those contributing factors came into play for both isolation and loneliness.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to add that even though we are concerned about loneliness because it is so prevalent, we feel that social connections are more exciting to discuss. It's something we can do about, and Amanda related to it already. Yeah.
Yeah, because as Amanda said, socialization has the objective measures. We can take a look at that, count it, see it's improving, see if it's decreasing. Is social isolation always an unpleasant or negative situation for the older adult, as opposed to loneliness?
I would say no. It's some people really like to be socially connected all the time, and others are quite happy to be on their own and they can entertain themselves. That's my observation.
Sure. The difference between being alone, living alone, and being lonely.
Right.
Yeah. So you focused on connection rather than isolation to get at your subjects' individual perceptions and attitudes about their situation.
That's exactly it. It was sort of twofold. And this was really driven by Anna and by the SWOOS team, the team of seniors that we worked with, to frame around connection. As Anna said, people are a bit more inclined to talk about connection. Perhaps it's less stigmatized than talking about loneliness. We also know that people experiencing social isolation are the hardest to reach. And this was another question as we were planning the research of how are we even, with the limited resources that we had, a group of graduate students and our team, how are we even going to find the people that are socially isolated?
Yeah.
So in reframing, it allowed us to kind of include a broader range of participants. But go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I would say I know my community and I know people as a social worker, and I would say people are social beings. And so I think if you feed on that, and once there is a certain trust, they might share, they might recognize that there's loneliness and it's easier for them to talk about. I think you first have to develop a relationship with, sorry, the subject. Because when it was something actually, loneliness, social isolation was something that we already became aware of in our community for many years, but especially in 2024, it was. I brought it to. I'm on the board of directors of the local community association, and I brought it up, and people were not aware of it. And I think that COVID, if we think back to 2020, that was obvious that it was more prevalent and people were motivated to do something. There were initiatives, but then after COVID, people were supposed to be fine. And that was not the case.
Yeah. So COVID really masked a lot of the isolation there. So your study, the community-based study, you reached out to seniors in your community. How many seniors, and what were the results? What were the findings?
So we had about 36 unique participants across 3 workshops or 3 community-based sessions. which for us, for community-based research, was actually quite a good number. And we also ran a digital survey alongside, again, to try to reach folks that weren't interested or able to come out to participate. And we had about 60 respondents to the survey. And we learned a lot of really interesting things from our multiple ways of collecting data. The main sort of overarching theme that that stood out for us was that connection relief thrives in informal, local, and outdoor spaces. So yes, formal services are important in establishing social connection and identifying social isolation for older adults. But in terms of those social connections, we really saw from our participants that it grows through these small, repeated acts of neighborliness, through shared spaces that feel inclusive and comfortable for older adults, and these kind of informal networks of care that can be established through maybe what starts as a formal connection or a formal program or activity.
Wow.
So the physical environment really directly shapes social connection, for better or worse. We saw barriers in that too.
So programs are good, but they're not enough.
Right. So I mean, certainly not, it's not one size fits all. We know that. We know that the word senior encompasses a very wide range of ages and life experiences. And so we saw that people were interested in more programming, of course, more varieties of programming, but also they were interested in social opportunities that weren't tied to a specific activity, because sometimes the activity can become limiting, right, as people's abilities, interests, or needs change with aging. So we really saw, I think one of the most surprising findings was the call for a need for third spaces that were more accessible, low barrier, social spaces that really just supported older adults being together, not necessarily doing something together.
Yeah, that's interesting because I spend some time at senior communities, and I hear time and again that a lot of people just don't leave their apartments. And there is a wealth of programs, activities, very useful social activities. And we always wonder what's going to help people draw it. And I think you touched on something important, Amanda, that many times people don't want that program. They don't want a kind of a structured thing. They just want the space, the connection without necessarily having an agenda. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's almost within that people have a barrier for whatever reason. Maybe you notice it in the States. I come from another culture, and I find the people there are more gregarious. I've noticed it in the States too. People here are a bit reserved, I find, and they almost need permission to reach out. And I think if you facilitate that, it helps. And I find my community now very friendly. People just smile at one another. They walk, they talk, they make comments on one another's dog or the weather. And in our community, that is very acceptable. And we have also the type of community where we do a lot of walking and what is called active transportation. And I think that also contributes to meeting people. But, what I found interesting in the study that I think I know quite a few people in my community. We have about 6,000 people living here in Old Ottawa South. But there were people coming to the workshops that I have never seen. I only knew a few, and I found that so interesting. It wasn't always the same old bunch that came out. So I think it were the workshops and themselves that appealed to people, and they had permission to go, and they didn't have to pay, and it was very good to see that, and it wasn't a lot that, well, I mean, you gave them exercises, and I think in our community, I'm proud to say people are kind of curious and they are educated and yeah, so it's maybe not a typical community Joe have, and you go to people that are shut in their house for whatever reason. It might be harder to get them out, but this was my observation.
Sure. Yeah, and I can see apartment buildings in, many big cities where people are living and maybe alone and not have a lot of opportunities to get out. So I think I was impressed with your study, Amanda, when I first heard, because you're able to draw some conclusions, some inferences for city planners, and what changes can be made or should be made in communities that might help to kind of draw this this collection out and get over some of those hurdles.
Certainly, access is always very important. So
Yeah.
making accessible entrances to buildings. Here in Ottawa, winter conditions can be quite debilitating if the snow removal isn't done effectively or properly. It really can shut off your world and your access in a very walkable neighborhood like Old Ottawa South. But even just sidewalk infrastructure, cracks or high curb cuts or little potholes, these are all things that can be really make it really difficult for older adults to get outside and then to socially connect. Lack of benches was something that we heard quite frequently, just easy resting places, convenient resting places. And that coupled with kind of unreliable or limited transit options can be quite, again, can sort of really contribute to feelings of isolation or social disconnection.
Yeah. So seating, walking spaces, room. You mentioned transit, public transportation or
public transit, parking as well. People commented there was limited parking in this particular neighborhood. And yeah, we Ottawa again, we're sort of seeing lots of issues with our transit at the moment. And I think winter is a hot topic again because of where we're located, but summers are difficult too with climate change. We see increased hotter days and lack of ability to find a place to rest, find a place to cool down. Again, can really limit seniors' comfort level and ability to go outside and connect and make use of services.
Yeah, if I may add to that, I found it interesting that shaded benches were mentioned. I mean, I know that our benches under the trees, but maybe there should be a different design. And I'm just in recognition of the climate change and that it's just, yeah, you want to sit in the shade. You're looking for shade. You like to sit down, but you don't want to burn.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting. There were many, yeah.
We see that in bus stops, or at least I do out here, that are covered, and just park benches may or may not be covered, but
yeah,
there's a trend for more covers for the bus stops.
Yeah.
All ages are waiting. Yeah.
And it would help in winter time when people are waiting. But I think people that want to socialize, it's nice when you meet somebody and there's a bench nearby and say, oh, let's sit down and let's have a visit, just a spontaneous thing. It's I think there's a real need for that.
Sure. So are there things that communities can offer the older adult population to elicit this participation? Can they offer more groups or events in their communities? I don't know. What do you think?
I think so. I think that, you say communities, it don't have to be the community centers or the government, but I think also some stores and well, we have a very welcoming library and a welcoming. I'm thinking of the Black Squirrel, welcoming secondhand
Bookstops,
bookstore,
yeah,
and
bookshops.
that is something that they can do, and hopefully we'll do more of. Just taking initiatives, and we have a place where people sing. I'm thinking of Red Bird. We have quite a few, Joe. We have quite a few amenities in our neighborhood, quite a few, and it is, I think, also the knowledge sharing of what
Yeah.
places are welcoming was
Yeah.
important. And that's why I found, for example, the social mapping, that exercise. It was fun to really check how you had the dots, and then you could press on the dots, and then hey, what's happening there? Oh, I didn't know that. And I found that it really got the community talking, because then I kept hearing, oh, but you didn't include this and that wasn't included. So I see that in my community work, it is more to mobilize the community and get people involved, and for people to become aware. And that is a bit of a concern for me, that I think everywhere, maybe even in the drugstore, there could be a screen when people say, hey, where can I go for this or that? That they just have that access, that not everybody likes to always go on their phone, but it is at least I got many ideas out of the research.
Yeah. So when you talk about the mapping, Anna, were you able to show maybe hotspots where more people were interacting and you could identify what was there that drew them? Is
Sort
that?
of, yeah. So we had one of our activities was barrier and services mapping within the neighborhood. So in the workshops, participants would locate on a paper map where they go, where they feel connected, where they feel places of perhaps disconnection or barriers to connection, and where else they might see potential for connection. And so part of the digital storytelling piece was to digitize all of these suggestions. And so, yeah, that's exactly what Anna's referring to, is this sort of prototype map where you could see the places that were identified as important sites of connection for those who participated.
It's a fun map, because for people in our neighborhood, it's fun to press on a spot and then, find out what's happening, It is, I can even see, hey, you could start a conversation, you could agree or disagree, or maybe, I wish that your study wouldn't stop with this one, you could go on. And not just to this neighborhood. And that's something that my vision is, that it can be extended to other neighborhoods and different results will come out.
Yeah, because I think like we've said, there, of course, people have different social preferences. Some people are more extroverted, and this is of course true no matter your age. But I think having access, as Anna said, to better access to information about existing activities was really important. And then just markers of welcoming and inclusive places for older adults. That's also, an important piece of information sharing that I think could go a long way in, again, making our communities feel a bit more inclusive and a bit more comfortable.
Sure. So,
and then also the coordination among services, right? I think your question earlier around what can our neighborhoods do, there are community centers, there are different hubs, but they also are sometimes disconnected in terms of knowledge about what the other offers, or how they might coordinate resources or share resources to support the community. So there's lots of potential there.
Yeah, and not to duplicate so much. So what you're saying is the information, the education goes a long way to let people know what in fact we do have. Here are a lot of our activities. Anna, you mentioned amenities. You have a lot of amenities. What were the popular ones that drew the people in?
The one, for example, the shopping Cedars. It's a
grocery
place
store,
that
yeah.
has been
Yeah.
around for a long time,
Okay.
and very friendly staff there.
Mm.
They have interesting stuff in the store. We have a Shoppers Drug Mart, and they have senior um, days on Thursdays where you get 20% off.
Mm.
Well, you see a lot of seniors there, and I think that they tend to play Elvis Presley a lot. I find that the Mayfair had a local cinema, certain movies, but you see quite a few gray hairs there, and it's easy to talk to people. Here, people are very friendly.
Parks,
Yeah,
dog parks, those were also,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, key
the-
spaces,
Mm-hmm.
outdoor green spaces.
Yeah. Oh, that's good though. Mayfair is a grocery store?
The
no,
Mayfair is the
Mayfair is
movie
the
theater.
cinema.
Oh, the cinema. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and they
So,
have not a typical, well,
Independent
say
cinema, kind of.
America, they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
independent movies, a bit off. And I
Mhm.
think since we are, well, maybe a bit of a university ghetto, the kind of people that live here, they like that type of movies. Yeah, we are kind of a homogeneous community with,
Yeah.
I would say, with independent thinkers,
Uh-huh.
but also very social. So
Yeah.
it's
And very
yeah,
walkable. I think so. A lot of what we found, I think, is unique to this neighborhood because there's a lot of multi-use
Mm.
spaces, there's a lot of shops, there's a lot of services within walking distance. Of course, in more rural or even like suburban areas, you would
yeah,
see differences in terms of what we've learned. But it all sort of points to the same thing. Accessible neighborhood infrastructure can really
Mhm.
go a long way to just
Mhm.
getting people out
Yeah.
of their homes comfortably. And
Yeah.
post-COVID, we still see a lot of
Mhm.
challenge, not just for seniors, but particularly for
Sure.
seniors.
Yeah. Well, I think this is useful information. I mean, you're talking about the accessibility. We need to be able to get around, walking ideally, but having some simple public transportation,
yeah,
jitneys or whatever, but
Mhm.
also having something to draw the people, like the discounts at the stores or the
yeah,
music. I mean, I have a friend who has a band and they love to play to senior
Mhm.
groups. And I'm thinking, well, why don't you try going to some of these large drugstores when they're having some special,
yeah.
you can play for a couple of hours and draw. So I think it's kind of creating that energy in these locations that, and certainly we need to educate the community about it, but
Yeah.
it's more than just going to pick up some medications at the drugstore. Yeah.
Create some fun.
Create some fun. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Just create fun. And I found, for example, the one of the well, there were several good suggestions, and I like that Plaza Pop. To just
Yeah.
there's I can think of one um, well, parking lot, deserted
Mhm.
lot, and I think that would be fun to have what you mentioned, Joe. If
Mhm.
you could have a band, I know actually a band, and if they would like to play there, I think, and
Mhm.
if you promote it the right way and create some energy in the community, maybe have some shade in the summer. Yeah, people would come out and they would talk and
Yeah, I like
stop me
that.
from thinking more.
That could be a good draw. And this band I'm thinking of plays a lot of Elvis Presley music, so
Oh, yeah.
it might fit with the population. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
this
does,
is
kind of take us back to that third spaces idea, which, as Anna said, um, redesigning an existing empty lot or vacant space can really
Mhm.
go a long way.
Mhm.
And also the conversion of existing accessible spaces
Yeah.
for different uses. We have a lot of churches in the neighborhood
Yeah.
that are accessible, but
Yeah.
perhaps don't offer programming or aren't targeting programming in a
Mhm.
way that is inclusive for seniors in the community. So there is so much potential within our
Yeah.
neighborhoods to
Yeah.
share resources and talents and
Yeah.
space. And
Yeah.
that really can go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of unused spaces, that's for sure. But as you say, the fun component makes just adds another
Mhm.
level of interest. Yeah,
We
that's
all like to have fun, and
Well,
that's
that's it.
why we
Yeah.
got away from the social isolation, like, yeah, and if you, yeah, I can think of one person, for whatever reason, she was stuck at home and said, oh, yeah, there was a day that she didn't come out for 10 days, a
Mhm.
Yeah.
period. And so I happened to get her involved in programming, and money was for her a barrier too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so, and we are addressing that with the community association. It's and she's a fun person, and there was I can think of another person who identified herself as lonely. And oh, she really signed up. She wants to be a volunteer whenever there's something, she
Mhm.
wants to do it. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, get people out
Yeah,
and connect. I think it's the
Mhm.
personal connection. If
yeah,
if the community says to them, "You are important. We like to know.
mm,
Come on
Mhm.
out." I
yeah,
think that's an important message. That instead of people maybe being considered a nuisance. No,
mhm.
just plain friendliness.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah,
I found it was when I look back at the pictures that were taken at the sessions, Amanda, you could
Mhm.
see how engaged people
Mhm.
were,
yeah.
and they kept talking and they didn't want to
They didn't want to
leave.
leave. I know.
Mhm.
I know.
Mhm.
And that was
Mhm.
one of the kind of nice surprises of the research. And it speaks to the nature of participatory action research. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
again, the research that highlights individual lived experience and sharing of stories and really
Mhm.
prioritizes
Yeah.
that as the expertise, right? As individuals, as experts in their own lives, of their
Mhm.
own circumstances.
Mhm.
And so the activities, yes, they were data collection, but it wasn't, we want to talk to you, isolated person. It was really come out and let's talk about the things that matter to us. And so to see the social connections that were established just
Yeah.
from the research activities in and of
Sure.
themselves was a really nice
Yeah.
kind of added layer uh, of this whole
Without the
experience.
labeling, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um, one thing I've learned is I kind of immerse myself in strategies for successful aging. Is that um, I always encourage people that you have to take some steps yourself. You can't wait for people to knock on your door and say, "Here I am. I'm gonna bring you to whatever." So there's an element there of people taking some responsibility for, um, connection and staying involved because, yeah, we can locate and help to draw people out, but for the most part, I think it's still gonna require that self-ownership, that initiative to do something and reach out. I don't know what you think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I was thinking about the barriers but I think if there is decline, for example, if you have always considered yourself pretty competent and then there is cognitive decline, um, that it is important to accept it. And that doesn't mean that you can't smile at
Mm,
somebody in the neighborhood, and
sure.
just be a friendly person and a friendly face and say hi to the kids.
Yeah.
Everybody's important. I know that there was a person who didn't come back after the information session, and there was a language barrier, but I knew she wanted to be
Mhm.
involved. And we get that, of course, in a multi-ethnic society, that there are language barriers. There was another person who was concerned about mobility. She wanted to be involved, but well, and then of course we had the parking. Um, yeah, that is, I know that they had for the kids they have wagon rides in the park during the summer festival. But I mean, how we could have a rickshaw, or I know there's across the canal there is a center where they have a bike. It is.
Mhm.
Just to have that kind of program that
Sure.
people can hop in and don't have to worry about their mobility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just say, hey, you are invited. And
Yeah.
I find promoting in our neighborhood, so we have the articles, we have digital newsletters, we do postering. But I think it is word of mouth that creates a snowball of, hey, come
Mhm.
on out, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it is that encouragement, like you said, in the face of, as you also said, these sort of changes in functional conditions or in mobility conditions, and all of those things can really exacerbate how difficult it is to make
Yeah.
social connections. But as you mentioned, there is so much on the other side of that. There are so many people that do want to connect and
Yeah.
spend time together, and loneliness comes and goes, right? It doesn't need to be pervasive. It doesn't need to be constant. And
Mhm.
so perhaps, we didn't even really scratch the surface of caregivers and how that can impact
Yeah.
isolation and loneliness. And
Mm.
but um, you know, those responsibilities and those life circumstances, they change, right? And so being open to getting into social connection when in different circumstances, I think is also important, challenging. I obviously am not suggesting that it's easy, but there are ways out and through, and sometimes it is just feeling that a place is inclusive for you, or knowing what's going on in your community can
Yeah.
really make or break the experience, I think.
Mm. Well, we're just about out of time. I have one more question for you both. From your research and your personal experience, what does feeling connected mean to you, and how can someone increase their own sense of connection?
That was a good question. I'm thinking myself that if I feel connected, yeah, if I can knock on somebody's door and just say hi and maybe have a glass of wine when it's sort of the happy hour time, but also have if I know somebody, oh, Ian, he could maybe put my winter tires in the car, or so and so could maybe help me figure out that electronic problem. And it is nice if it's so helpful if you live in a community where people, when you can knock on their door and or
Mm.
say, are being picked up from a medical
Mm.
appointment,
Yeah.
that's, but personally, it makes
Mhm.
me feel connected.
Sure.
And I
Mhm.
can phone people, to say, hey, well, just for a chat, or just say, hey, let's have a telephone chat, or that's
Mhm.
that's important to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. But I think for us, from maybe the research side, and for me as an instructor working with young people, with graduate students, I think what this community-based research project really showed us was how communities can mobilize around the things that matter to them and the
Mm.
needs that they have to improve their circumstances, to improve things like ability to age in place. And it was so inspiring to see, as Anna mentioned earlier, just how engaged this community was, how much enthusiasm people
Mm.
brought to these conversations, how important, how vitally important these questions were, and how a community can really come together to talk about the things that matter to them and to action on the things that matter to them. I think that was one of the biggest learnings for my students, and the sort of intergenerational connections that happened through this project. Um, that's the power of community, and
Mm.
that's
Sure.
why connection is
Yeah.
important.
And for example, I haven't mentioned to you yet, there's somebody organizing a repair cafe. So
Mm.
in the neighborhood where you can, there's different talent, how to come together, say if you maybe your bicycle or sewing,
Mm.
and so I don't know, it's Guy that's organizing it, and uh, so that's, I wonder what will happen, but we have
Yeah.
to support it, and Joe, that could bring people out too. You say if you have something concrete, that you say, oh, I saw that, and yeah, actually, this or that doesn't work. I had it myself as a radio, and went to a repair cafe. But now they want to bring it to the neighborhood, and I haven't mentioned there was this morning I heard of somebody, a man down the street who offered to say, "Well, I'll help people. I like to help people, and we know where he lives." And if they need something to lift, I'll help.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
that's, yeah, that
Yeah.
brings me, we could maybe create a network of helpers. I don't know if it
Mm.
sounds a bit boring, but no, but that is important, reliable helpers.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, you've done some great research. You've got some great findings, and I think you're getting those big wheels turning now, and
yeah,
a lot of things can spring from that. As you said, Anna, just knowing that you can call somebody up, or I always recommend, you know, don't be afraid to knock on your neighbor's
Mhm.
door and
yeah.
invite yourself in for coffee or make a call to a distant cousin or anybody, but
Mhm.
to reach out ourselves. And, I'm doing some series of presentations I call New Chapters and New Purpose. And it's all about helping people see the opportunities that lie ahead and um, what there is to celebrate about
Mhm.
aging and encouraging people to, create some new goals, some new chapters. And I'm doing a presentation next week at a nice community, and we're going to break up into small groups. And here's some questions. And what's the next chapter you want to start? And we're going to write it down on an
Mhm.
index card. And because I think we've been accustomed to kind of just naturally slowing down with aging. And I say, no, why? Because we have so much opportunity now. Let's look at opening new doors and let's see what's next. So
I
that's why I
think
love
it,
to help people think about what we can do that's getting out of a same old routine. And I think I commend you both for the research you did, because I think we get people thinking about the all the pluses about aging. We talk a lot about what there is to lose, and I'd like to talk about what we gain as we get older. So I
yeah.
think
Yeah,
think we're on the same
and
track.
I would find it important for people to say, "Hey, what would you do for fun, or what,
Yeah,
yeah,
Mm.
what gives you joy?" It
yeah,
doesn't always have to be so learned or serious. No, it is like one goal of mine is when I have the time is I like to learn to play euchre.
uh-huh.
I I'm
Yeah,
not good. I would like it's on my bucket list, and
yeah,
well, I would like to pick up piano again, and so there's a long bucket list. But I have
mhm,
to find the time and not
sure,
become involved with research.
sure. Yeah. Well, I bought myself a set of drums during COVID, so I'm
Oh,
still
good.
still learning. Yeah. Well, thank you both for being part of this program. I think it was a great conversation. Thanks to our listeners. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, you'll find more ideas, tools, and discussions at my livingto100.club and inside my community forum, livingto100.community. Until next time, keep moving forward with purpose, curiosity, and a commitment to living well at every age. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Anna. Appreciate your participation, and kudos on the good work you're doing.
And thank you for having us.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.